going to be going over sales techniques. Again, I'm Dwight with Max Moving Training. And there's 3 different closing techniques that you've probably been using, but don't know that you've been using. And pretty much we're just going to bring light to it today on what those 3 closing techniques are. So just looking at my notes, I want to make sure I don't miss anything. But pretty much traditionally, we've been probably using about 2 different type of techniques. And those 2 type of techniques were, one was more on the aggressive side, where we were saying something like, let's see. So right now I'm still showing limited availability on X moving date. All we require to secure your move is a deposit, which will be deducted from the cost of your move. It is to secure you with us. Would you like to put that on a Visa or a MasterCard? So with using that approach, that was more of a direct, kind of like more aggressive approach. And some people feel comfortable using that approach. Some people do not feel comfortable using that approach. But on the second hand, the conservative approach I've seen most people use were things like, let's see. So the quote I have for you right now is 900. Would that work for you? So you have the aggressive approach where you're just going directly into the sale, where you're saying, well, hey, would you like to put that on a Master or Visa card? And then you have the conservative approach where you're like, well, hey, here's your quote. Would that work for you? And there are 2 different versions. There are 2 different views of viewing it. And not to say that any one of those approaches are wrong. It's just a time and place to use either one of those approaches. And it really just comes down to where the customer is positioned in the estimating stage or the quoting stage. Which side of the fence are they leaning against? Are they leaning against, oh, well, I really don't have that much money. I'm not really, I'm not sure, if I could really afford it, so then you're kind of like, okay, well, hey, let me use that second approach for this situation. But if they're like, oh, everything you told me today sounds amazing, or whatever the case is, and it's kind of like, hey, roll into the reservation. Hey, would you like to put that on a Visa or a MasterCard today? So it's really just filling out the customer and figuring out which way they're leaning towards. But there are 3 different types of closing techniques. Those were just kind of like 2, but those were kind of like open-ended closing techniques. So pretty much just to go into it, let me just share my screen. Let me make sure I got the right screen open. So, okay, here we go. And let me share my screen. Okay, so again, there's 3 closing techniques. And, okay. So the 3 closing techniques that there are, which again, we probably haven't been putting a name to it, is you have a trial close technique, you have an alternative close technique, and you have an assumptive close technique. And these are all valuable techniques. It just depends, again, where and which way the customer is leaning towards everything that you've pitched to them. So you're going to go through your traditional script where, hey, you're upselling all of your services that you have, whether you have, junk removal services, whether you have packing services, cleaning services, delivery services, whatever you may have, you should ultimately go through a series of questions when a customer calls in. If they're asking for move-in services, hey, go through all of your upsell items at least once, asking them, hey, they may not know what you offer, so don't assume they know what you offer. And then basically once you go through that assessment, then, hey, paint the picture for how your service or what service they chose will work, so that pretty much you're laying out all of the FAQs for that customer right away. Then you're going to go over the benefits of service, benefits of your service to those customers and why they should go with that service and how it works. And then you'll go into your closing technique. And with that being said, we're going to show you how each of these come together. So your trial close. A trial close is an attempt to determine how close the customer is to actual acceptance of a product or service. Using a trial close is a low-risk method of gauging the customer's opinion. A positive response to a trial close will indicate the customer is ready to buy and will lead to a close. On the other hand, a negative response to a trial close is just a signal for you to change strategy and ask for a few more questions. Without using a trial close, you may run into trouble trying to close sales. You may be running on false assumption. A negative answer to a close cannot turn into a positive one easily. A prospect may stick to his decision and defend it. Here are some examples of using a trial close. So, can you see by choosing 4 men for your moving needs, how it would benefit you? Wouldn't it be easier if you choose us for your complete moving needs? If you chose our delivery option, wouldn't it make sense to choose our packing services? So the commonality of all of these questions is as simple as a yes or a no. And that's a trial close. You basically are trying to gauge which side of the fence they're on. Is it a yes or is it a no? That's all you're really asking out of all of these questions in the trial close situation, to feel out where they are. So that's technique 1. And we're going to put it later in this video, we're going to put this together. We're going to do some exercises together. So if you're tuned in, definitely, I'll stop for a few minutes or so that you can actually apply some of these closing techniques, because pretty much I want y'all to crush it during this moving season, whether you're the sales rep for your company or you have sales reps for your company. Hey, they can apply the same technique. And this time over time has worked with closing on jobs. So the second technique we have is the alternative close technique. The alternative close works by offering more than one clearly defined alternative to the customer. The number of alternatives should be very few. 2 or 3 is often quite adequate. If you offer too many alternatives, the customer will then be faced with more complex problems of how they choose between the many alternatives offered. The alternative close will sound something like this. Now that I've explained the cost of both moving packages, would you prefer gold or silver package? Would the 4 guys or 2 guys work best for you? Which service that we mentioned appeals to you more, cleaning or moving? So again, basically with the alternative close, you've posed options to the customer. Hey, I know that you mentioned the 2 guys before, and we recommended that, hey, because of you having so many big items, that we would prefer that we do 4 guys, just so that they could be more efficient. But if you're really adamant about the 2 guys, we can send that to you. It just may take a little bit more time. So which would be better for you, 4 guys or 2 guys? And you kind of let it play out or so like that to see which direction works for them. But you don't want to say, hey, oh, would the 5 guys work for you? The 4 guys work for you? The 3 guys work for you? The 2 guys work for you? You don't want to have that many options with alternative close because you overwhelm the customer. So kind of, again, stick to about 2 or 3 max. All right, so the third closing technique we have is the assumptive close technique. The assumptive close is used when you assume the customer is ready to accept the product or service. It should only be used when you are confident they are ready to buy, and assumptive close focus on details of establishing the product or service. For example, we are ready to take the deposit. What type of card would you be using today? Again, that goes back to the original script that I mentioned to you, where you're asking for the Visa or MasterCard. What is the address that we will be coming to? What time will work for you that day? So these are three different types of closing techniques. The trial close is more or less looking for a yes or no answer. The alternative close is giving the customer different options that could work for them. And then the assumptive close is, hey, assuming the sale. But you have to use these in the right scenarios. So again, as I mentioned, we were going to do some exercises so that pretty much we can see how they come together. So typically, if these are your closing statements, hey, let's begin. Number one, let's begin filling out paperwork. What closing technique out of the three that we just mentioned will be suited for this situation? Number two, we've talked about our cleaning, packing, and moving services. Which service will work for you? So if you got a piece of paper, I would say just fill these out as we go. I'll go as slow as possible, but I don't know how many people we actually have tuned in, so I won't hold the video up too long. Number three, all we will need is a $50 deposit today. Let's start with your last name. So again, the goal is this considered a trial close? Is this considered a assumptive close, or is this an alternative close? So if we can be there early in the morning to load up, will that help ease your stress of moving? Moving Saturday would be convenient to your job schedule, don't you think? Would you be coming in this week or next week to begin the paperwork process? Which service that we mentioned you feel would work for you? Can you see why we are recommending this service to you now? We have all types of moving options for you. Which one do you feel would be best? All right, so take a second. Just put maybe number one, closing technique, number two, that closing technique, and then we'll match up your answers with the answers and see how close you are. So I'll give you about a minute or so, play some jams over here while y'all focus on that. So just a reminder, trial close is a yes or no type of answer. Alternative close is multiple options. Assumptive close is assuming the sale. All right, so we'll go into the answers now. And so for the first one, let's begin filling out paperwork. That's an assumed close, so we're going to say that's an assumptive close. Going into number two, we've talked about our cleaning, packing, moving services. Which service will work for you? That's an alternative close. All we will need is a $50 deposit today. Let's start with your last name. Again, an assumptive close. So if we can be there early in the morning to load up, will that help ease your stress of moving? Yes or no? Trial close. Moving Saturday would be convenient to your job schedule, don't you think? Again, another trial close. Would you be coming in this week or next week to begin the paperwork process? Assumptive, you're assuming here. Of all service mentioned, which do you feel would work for you? Again, alternative. Can you see why we are recommending this service to you now? Trial. We have all types of moving options for you. Which one do you feel would be best? Again, alternative. So you could see how, based on the question you ask, and based on which way the customer is leaning, which option would be best in the situation. All right, so now we have some practices or so. So with the practice, scenarios we have. I like to use some well-known people, you know. So we have Oprah Winfrey, and she called in to discuss a possible move. She is concerned since she has a hectic work schedule, she wouldn't have time to prepare for the move on such short notice. You have to discuss the service we have to offer, but she is more nervous about the time than anything else. Write a closing statement using an alternative close method that will present a solution for Miss Winfrey. So in this case here, you can write something similar to, hey, Miss Winfrey, I understand you are very busy with work. We can have packing, cleaning, and moving bundle, or just packing and moving bundle together to be the most efficient in this case. Which bundle do you feel will help alleviate your time concern? So again, we're bundling things up. We're giving Miss Winfrey two options so that pretty much she can allow us to figure out what's most efficient. We're not telling Miss Winfrey, hey, you need to have this. With this approach, we're kind of giving her that alternative option to allow her to choose for herself, because she is buying into you based on what you feel may be best for her. But at the same time, it's a give and take relationship with the alternative close. All right, so the next one we have is Wesley Snipes came into your office complaining how he received such a horrible packing services from a competitor in the past. Wesley wants to hire us to pack his big house. You mentioned the benefits of our packing services. He seems almost convinced. Write a closing statement using the trial close that will seal the deal for Wesley. So an example of this one will come down to, hey, Mr. Snipes, you mind if I call you Wesley? Okay, joking around. Hey, Mr. Snipes, even though it's not our fault, I almost feel obligated to apologize for your experience with your last movers. Here's what I can do for you. I can send you my two best packers with our standard packing kit for your home and guarantee this job will be done right. How does that sound? And basically by doing that with the, sorry, let me make sure I got it right. So basically by doing that with a trial close, pretty much by adding that guaranteed in there, it's almost like a guarantee, almost like a guarantee yes, that, you know, he's going to want to go in that direction. But because how does that sound is a, the word probably could have been used differently on the end, but pretty much it gives him a more of a yes or no type of situation with the trial close situation. So that's kind of like how you would use that in that case. And then we got Kim Kardashian, one of our most loyal customers, comes into our office. You ask, how's everything? She tells you she has been so busy that she hasn't had time to keep up with her home organization and she needs to downsize. You inform her of your storage service to unclutter her home. Write a closing statement using an assumptive close that will keep Kim a satisfied customer. So with this one here, hey, Ms. Kardashian, I see things are a bit out of hand. As mentioned, we can offer storage to alleviate some of the clutter. How about I send you some guys over to you next? How about I send you some guys over to you next week? Will Monday or Tuesday work? So again, you're assuming the sale by asking, will Monday or Tuesday work? And that's really the difference, where it's kind of like, hey, again, with alternative close, you're given a couple options. With trial close, you're looking for a yes or no answer. With assumptive close, you're assuming the sale. You're assuming that you already have the customer in the bag and you're just like, hey, let's go for it. Will Monday work for you? And that's really how it breaks down to bringing these all together. But again, you don't have to be very passive aggressive where it's like, hey, would a Master or Visa card work for you? If I don't use this close, I may not get the sale. Feel out every customer. Every one customer is different. So feel them out. Go through your funnel approach of everything that you offer to painting a picture to the benefits of your service. And while you're having that conversation and building that rapport with the customer, you get that feel where it's like, okay, I got them. I'm not really sure if I got them. This person is really cold right now. And it's basically cold, warm, or hot. Look at it that way, cold, warm, or hot. And use these approaches in those situations to ultimately get into the goal of booking that customer. All right, so that was the 3 examples. We went over how we can apply them. But I kind of hope that this helps. We go over this in my mentor coaching program where we actually go in depth. As you can see, this is about 36 pages, but with my students / other owners, we actually go in depth about how to really bring this together. And, if you feel like, hey, you want to have your sales manager or whoever on the call or whatever the case is, when we go over something like this, so that, it's not something that you have to repeat for them, because this is some real powerful stuff. And I feel like every person that's maybe dealing with sales can really utilize this. Then again, once you're in my coaching program, if that's a conversation we can have where we can bring them on the call and we can kind of go from there. But that'll end today's call with just understanding these 3 killer techniques for closing. We have alternative, we have trial close, and we have assumptive close. Let's go out there and crush it this summer and tear it up. All right, everybody, y'all take care.